Still standing. What endurance looks like when nothing breaks and nothing saves you. By Alex Kingston. Freedom Minds Books. Copyright 2026. This is a work of creative nonfiction. Names and details changed to protect privacy. Part 2. Chapter 3. Almost Working. In the early 2010s, an area lead position opened, the kind of role people described as the next step, as if steps were guaranteed to appear under your feet if you just kept showing up. I had the numbers, clean metrics, no drama attached to my name, the kind of reputation organizations love because it doesn't require explaining. Team leads vouched for me without being asked. The interviews went the way interviews go when you've lived the work. I didn't perform confidence. I spoke in specifics. I answered questions before they finished asking them. I sent follow-ups the same day, not because I was eager, but because leaving things unfinished made me itch. Final round. An executive shook my hand and said, "Strong candidate. We'll be in touch." He said it like a conclusion, like it was already decided. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The silence wasn't hostile. It was worse than hostile. It was indifferent. When the call finally came, it was a short one. Friendly tone, scripted warmth. "Great fit," the voice said, "but we're going with an internal promotee. Keep up the good work." I sat at my desk after, hands resting on the keyboard without typing. The office air felt different, like someone had turned the temperature down 1 degree and expected me not to notice. It wasn't rage, it wasn't shock, it was measurement. Effort deployed, outcome declined. A few years later, I built a side project, dashboards and automation for small firms that didn't have the staff to keep up with their own data. The first clients were grateful in a way that felt almost personal. They sent messages that said, "This saved us," and meant it. Referrals trickled in. A bigger agency asked for a meeting, then another, then a third. We got close enough that I started imagining the shape of the life it could create. Less dependence, more room to breathe. Their email came on a Tuesday afternoon. "Love the work, budget cut, postponing." Later, I heard through a shared contact they'd gone with a cheaper option. No budget cut, just a different kind of value. In the early 2020s, I tried again in a different direction, writing, quietly, the way some people pray without admitting they believe in anything. I prepared a proposal, outlined chapters, polished the sample until the sentences stopped sounding like they wanted approval. A few people asked for more, full requests, that small surge of possibility. Then the responses. Great writing, wrong timing. A polite pass. Another, and one silence that never resolved into a yes or a no. Near misses carry a special cruelty, close enough to taste, far enough to make you question the point of tasting at all. Effort sharpens skill, but it also reveals limits, limits that have nothing to do with talent. Timing waits for no one. So you keep records anyway. Notes, drafts, proof that you tried, proof that you didn't stop. Not because you're sure it will align next time, because building is what you know how to do. Reflection. What came closest to working, and how did it change the way you measure effort? Chapter 5. The Long Middle. Time compresses when nothing spikes. In the late 2010s and into the early 2020s, days stopped distinguishing themselves from one another, not in a depressing way, just quietly, like a stretch of road that looks the same mile after mile, convincing you you're not moving even as the numbers on the dash change. Mornings followed a script. Coffee measured by habit, not taste. Inbox cleared before anyone else arrived. Meetings attended, notes taken, action items logged and closed. Lunch eaten where I worked, not because I was busy, but because leaving felt inefficient. Efficiency had become its own kind of virtue. Evenings were orderly. Gym, groceries on the same day each week to avoid crowds. Dinner simple, repeatable. A book open on the coffee table, read a chapter at a time. lights out early enough to wake without resentment. Nothing was wrong. Bills were paid on time, the car ran, medical appointments stayed routine, savings grew slowly, predictably. I contributed to retirement accounts without thinking too hard about what retirement would actually look like. Phone calls followed patterns too. My mother called on Sunday evenings. "You're holding up?" she'd ask, voice already prepared for reassurance. "Yeah," I'd say, and mean it. Friends checked in occasionally, usually between their own milestones. "You good?" they'd ask, as if good were a binary state. "Good," I'd reply, then ask about them. There were no public markers of progress, no promotions announced in all-hands meetings, no photographs of exotic places, no dramatic exits or arrivals, just repetition, stable enough to stop demanding commentary. Some nights, lying in the dark, the question surfaced without urgency. Is this endurance or is this avoidance? The question stayed no long. Morning arrived, the calendar moved. Work needed doing. Most lives are decided here, in the long middle, not at the start where everything feels possible, not at the end where stories get edited into meaning, but in the years where nothing collapses and nothing rescues you. I kept the structure sound. That was the work. Reflection. What part of your life feels invisible because it never demanded saving? Chapter 5. Why I Didn't Quit. There was a year when quitting would have made sense. A reorganization announcement landed without warning, language softened by consultants, realignment, streamlining, necessary adjustments. Everyone knew what it meant. Teams reduced, roles blurred, employees encouraged to consider their options. My manager called me into a room with glass walls and neutral art. "It's not personal," he said, which is how people begin when something is about to be. He didn't tell me to leave. He didn't ask me to stay. He said numbers were tight and flexibility mattered. He said some people might volunteer to move on. That afternoon, I cleared my desk halfway, not emotionally, logistically. I updated my resume, scheduled calls with recruiters whose messages I'd ignored for years, opened listings that promised momentum, change, escape. At home, a suitcase sat open in the hallway, empty but waiting. My laptop glowed on the table, job descriptions stacked like invitations. It would have been clean to leave. I had savings, I had contacts, I had enough distance from panic to frame it as a choice. That night, at a quiet gathering after work, a colleague pulled me aside. Not dramatic, just tired. "You're staying, right?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. It was true. She nodded once. "We need someone steady." She didn't mean loyalty. She meant gravity, someone who kept things from drifting too far. I went home and sat on the floor, back against the couch, laptop open. My finger hovered on submit on an application that looked good on paper. Title upgrade, unknown variables. Staying wasn't bravery. It was arithmetic. I knew the systems, I knew the people, I knew the pressure points and how to absorb them without damage. Leaving would introduce chaos. Staying preserved control. On Monday, I went back, took on the extra hours, closed the half-cleared drawers, became essential again. Not quitting wasn't martyrdom. It was loyalty to the version of myself that valued stability over spectacle. Reflection. When did staying require more discipline than leaving?